Before Genesis, Africa spoke creation into existence. The griots call this moment time that doesn't pass. A time where everything is present, mixed together, waiting to be called into existence. And each star, each leaf. But when the Hebrew scriptures crossed the sea, and Genesis spread like light across the west, some of that wisdom was shrouded in silence. Creation became linear narrative, and mystery, dogma. The drum fell silent for a time. Long before Genesis was written in the sands of the East, African griots were already speaking of a creator who danced, not who commanded. Creation, for them, was not a decree, but a movement, a divine choreography where sound, light, and matter were born intertwined. The world, they say, is the sacred vibration of the first song. Before the word became flesh, sound became cosmos. In the beginning, say the elders, there was no void, but the breath of something that slept. A presence that was neither God nor man, but rhythm. The drum that still echoes in the villages of Africa today is only the distant echo of that first pulse, the heart of the universe beating for the first time. He forgot. Now, amidst ruins and constellations, the voice of the beginning awakens once more. It calls to those who listen, those who remember, those who dream. For the sound that created the world never ceased to vibrate, it merely waited for humanity to hear it again. On the banks of the Nile and in the forests of the Congo, in the deserts of the Sahel and on the coast of Ife, humanity recorded the same secret in myths. The universe did not begin with a word, but with sound. And sound had color, scent, form. Sound was the presence of something that knew the balance between spirit and matter. Something that modern man. Ancient winds tell that there was no sky, no ground, no border. There was only breath and desire. And from that desire sprang the spark, burning like fire over deep waters. It was there, at the intersection of sound and light, that the first divine gesture was born. Creation did not begin with a hand, but with a pulse. The same pulse that makes the drum beat, that makes the heart remember where it came from. That sound was not merely noise, but a consciousness awakening. Each echo spread like a luminous seed, and where it fell, nothingness became form. It was the beginning of the great dance, where the invisible began to clothe itself in matter. The elders say that this first sound still lives within every human heart, a reminder of the instant we were created from vibration. The ancients say that before time had a name, there was only silence. A silence so profound that even the gods hesitated to cross it. Then, suddenly, something vibrated in the void, a sound, a breath, an intention. It was as if the universe itself breathed for the first time. From this breath, rhythm was born, and from rhythm, the promise of all that was to come. It was clear. The elders said that the true beginning of humanity was not in a garden, but in a meeting between worlds. There, the visible and the invisible mingled, and each being was born with a divine spark in their heart. There was no sin, no guilt, only the balance between what was seen and what was felt. Man was part of the earth, and the earth part of... Long before the world heard of Adam and Eve, African peoples were already narrating their own beginnings. They spoke of gods who shaped the earth with their hands, of spirits who sang entire oceans into existence, of forces that moved among stars and rivers. It was Genesis before Genesis, the book of creation written not in letters, but in drums, smoke, and dreams. Every man who breathes is an ancient word being repeated. Creation, they say, is still happening. It hasn't finished, it has only changed form. But some say that this primordial sound was more than a call. It was a conversation. A conversation between forces that existed before light itself. And if we listen carefully, perhaps we can hear the echo of this ancient voice in the sounds of the world, or in the stories that African peoples have preserved to reveal what came after.
Amen.
Over the millennia, other voices emerged, translating this wisdom into new names, new gods, new sacred texts. What was song became word, and what was ritual became law. But at its core, the mystery remained the same. Who lit the first light? And why has the sound that created us been silenced by history? The griots tell that when the colonizer arrived, he brought with him a new Genesis, a book that spoke of a distant paradise, of a creation separate from man and nature. And so, the world began to forget that there was already a paradise here, between the African rivers and the sacred deserts. Official history veiled what once was. The elders say that before history existed, Africa already existed. It was not just a continent, but a living womb, the first heart of the earth. There, the sun awakened the gods, and the rivers learned their way back to the sea. Every stone, every tree, every wind seemed to hold a memory of the moment the world first opened its eyes. The griots call Africa the mother who dreamed of man. It was there that clay learned to breathe and the spirit learned to speak. There were no borders, no maps. But there are those who still hear the ancient echoes, hidden among forgotten words and symbols engraved in stone. Some say that the true Genesis was not erased. It merely fell asleep, waiting for someone, one day, to call it by name again. And perhaps that call is closer than we imagine. In ancient rituals, this wisdom still breathes. The priests and mothers of secrets chanted sacred songs, repeating sounds that time has not been able to erase. Each syllable was a portal, each rhythm, a call. And around the fire, when the drum began to beat, it was as if the universe remembered itself. And the wise say that if man wishes to rediscover his true origin, he must return, not only in body, but in consciousness. For the path that leads to the stars begins in the red earth of Africa. And perhaps, in the dust of the desert, the first voice that called humankind into existence still echoes. But time passed, and the world forgot about that mirror. Other peoples called themselves the center, and the cradle was silenced. Still, the sands of the Sahara, the rocks of Ethiopia, and the rivers of the Congo hold the murmur of something ancient, something that insists on being remembered. A call that travels between eras and continues to awaken those who hear it. Just pulses, the rhythm of life spreading across savannas and deserts. From there came the first songs, the first dances, the first questions about what lay beyond the visible. Consciousness, they say, was born when man looked at the sky and recognized himself in the stars. He understood that the brilliance up there was the same that burned within his chest. Thus, Africa became more than a place. It became a mirror and a temple, origin and return. Every step taken on its land echoed like an ancestral memory. The griots say that the first word was a breath, the Namo, the sound that brought order to chaos, guarded by the Dogon people. This living word spread like light on water, dividing the sky and the earth. That is how the world began to take shape. When the world was still new and time moved slowly, our ancestors began to speak. Their words were not like those of today. They needed neither mouths nor sound. They were vibrations, forces that shaped the invisible and gave names to things. Each word had a soul, and when spoken, it caused rivers, mountains, and spirits to spring forth. It was the language of the beginning, where speaking was the same as creating. Not by chance, but intentionally. The words of the ancestors were bridges, and each one of them connected the human to the divine. But it wasn't just sound, it was memory. The words carried the energy of those who came before, and by pronouncing them, the people relived their origins. Within them resided stories, healings, prophecies, and warnings. Each song, each prayer, each ancestral name was a spark of the same verb that once made the sun rise. The pyramids, temples, and inscriptions were not merely monuments, they were living texts. Each symbol told the secret of origin, each stone repeated the act of creation. In the beginning, there was only the ocean of nothingness, the Nun, a silent abyss where time slept. Then, from the depths, arose Adam, the self-created God, enveloped in liquid darkness. He emerged as the first ray of consciousness, a solitary point of light amidst infinity. From there, he shaped the air and moisture, the sky and the earth, breathing life into the void that surrounded him. And the elders whisper that even today these words travel on the wind, waiting for someone who knows how to hear them. For the modern world has forgotten the power of naming. And perhaps, when this gift is rediscovered, the sound of the first gods will resound again. The ancients say that Adam coughed up the first gods, Shu and Tefnut, giving rise to the cycle of air and water, of the invisible and the visible. From their children came Geb, the firm earth, and Nut, the starry sky, which stretched over the world like a veil of eternity. The universe then began to move, not like a machine, but like a living, pulsating body, breathing under the gaze of the gods. Egypt built not just cities, but mirrors of the sky on earth. And whoever understood their forms, they say, would understand the very spirit of the universe. But some believe that Adam's secret was not only to create the world, but also to remember that everything that is born one day returns to none. And so, on the banks of the Nile, the people learned that creation does not end at the beginning. It begins again in the silence of the waters. The priests of the Nile believed that the cosmos was sustained by balance. Mot, the sacred order that maintained everything in harmony. Each sunrise was a reminder of the victory of light over chaos, and each sunset, a return to the womb of mystery. Creation, for them, was not a distant event, but an eternal cycle that renewed itself with every heartbeat. Then Olajumer summoned Obatala, the sculptor of destiny, and entrusted him with a mission, to descend into the abyss and mold the earth. For this, he gave him a shell filled with sacred sand, a five-toed hen, and a golden chain that connected heaven to earth. Invisible, Obatala drifted downstream, slowly spinning until he touched the endless ocean. From above, Olajumer watched. When the shell opened, the sand scattered and, with the hen's help, was stirred until it formed the first piece of solid land. It was Isle Ife, the navel of the world, where life began to rise. There, Obatala bent down and molded man from clay, giving him form, but not his breath. It is said that, high in the heavens, Olajumer, the supreme being, observed the void below. The world was merely an immensity of water and mist, formless, without ground. Amma shaped the world like one who weaves a basket, each thread, a star, each knot, a destiny. And the Namo, upon arriving, brought knowledge of the cosmos. They revealed the secret of Sirius, the double star invisible to the naked eye, described by them long before. And so, the Yoruba understood that the divine is not distant, but present in every gesture, in every breath. The earth was not merely created, it was dreamed and shaped by the hands of the gods. And the ancients say that if man silences his heart, he can still hear the sound of the hen scratching the sand of the first world. The breath came from Olajumer, who, from on high, sent forth the divine breath. And when the clay breathed for the first time, the spirit of creation danced upon the earth. The Orishas gathered around, each bringing a gift: fire, water, wind, iron, love, and destiny. The world then filled with color, song, and purpose. But not everything was harmonious. It is said that Obatala, at a certain point, became intoxicated with palm wine and molded imperfect bodies. When he awoke, he wept upon seeing what he had done. Olajumer, however, did not punish him. He only taught him that even imperfection is part of creation. Since then, Obatala has become the Orisha of purity, repentance, and renewal. The Dogon people believe that the first creation didn't just happen here, but in heaven. Modern science discovered it. On the cliffs of Bandiagara, in the heart of Mali, lives a people who guard one of humanity's oldest mysteries, the Dogon. They say that before the earth had formed, the creator Amma revolved alone in the darkness of the universe. Then, from his thought, the Namo were born, beings of light and water, stellar messengers who descended to earth in spirals of fire. It was from them that humankind learned the rhythm of life, time, and the movement of the stars. And some say that, in the silent nights of the Sahel, it's possible to hear the whispers of these ancient travelers. They speak of twin worlds, of repeating cycles, of a universe that breathes in secret. And perhaps, in the words of the Dogon, lies hidden the memory of a time when humankind still conversed with the stars. Some scholars have tried to explain this mystery. How could an isolated people know about invisible stars without a telescope? But the elders smile, saying that knowledge of the heavens is not learned with the eyes, but with the spirit. For them, knowledge is an inheritance from the waters, brought by the Namo, who still observe humanity from the cosmic depths. In their sacred rituals, the Dogon people retell this story with masks, drums, and dances. Each gesture represents the descent of the gods, the balance between water and fire, between what is born and what returns. It is a celebration that blends the visible and the invisible, where man becomes a mirror of the sky. When the drum resonates, the sound seems to open portals, and the air vibrates with memories that do not belong only to this world. Among African myths, there is a recurring motif: clay as the primordial material of creation. In different cultures, Yoruba, Dogon, Bantu, Ashanti, clay represents the flesh of the world, the malleable body that receives the divine breath. For the Bantu people, death was never an end, but a journey. When the body ceases to exist, the spirit plunges into the waters, crossing the line to reunite with its ancestors. And from there, it is reborn in another time, in another body, with another name. The world is round, they say, and the river of life flows in circles, like the drum that never stops beating. For the Bantu peoples, creation was born from Kalunga, the great spiritual ocean that separates, and at the same time unites, the world of the living and the world of the ancestors. It is not merely a sea, but a mirror between realities, a living frontier where everything that dies is reborn on the other side. The waters of Kalunga are the womb and the tomb of the universe, the path that every being travels upon being born, living, and returning. The elders say that, before the first man, there was only this endless sea, swirling in silence. Then, from the depths, luminous forces emerged, bringing with them the seed of life. Each being, upon appearing, carried within itself an invisible thread that connected it to the sacred ocean. This thread was the NTU, the vital essence that keeps the universe in motion. Nothing is separate. Everything pulsates in the same rhythm of Kalunga. Before the word, before the light, there was only the damp, silent earth. From it, the gods molded man, but he remained motionless, cold, and empty. Then, one of the gods. And some say that if the world ever falls silent, Kalunga will once again call everyone back to its waters. For it is there, between the reflection and the depths, that the secret of return lies. And perhaps, in the tides of the spirit, the sound of the first call still echoes. Therefore, Bantu rituals always celebrate the waters. They are portals, when wine is poured on the earth, when the body is washed with herbs, when one sings by the riverbank, it is Kalunga who listens. With each offering, man reminds the universe that he is alive, and that he lives because he came from the waters. Thus, the boundary between the visible and the invisible becomes merely a breath. It becomes soul. Breath is the link between man and the sacred. It carries within it the original sound, the vibration that unites matter with spirit. That is why, in African traditions, breathing is praying. Each inhalation is a reminder that there is still a God within us. Each exhalation, the return of that God to the world. Clay, being fragile and malleable, also reveals human nature, made to transform, to break and be remade. Thus, man is the vessel of creation, but also the artisan of his own destiny. When he forgets his breath, sometimes Obatala, other times Ama or Nzambin Pungu, he leaned over his work and breathed into it the axe, the vital breath, the invisible fire that awakens the clay, and the gods of heaven are the bearers of order and light. Obatala, creator of forms, Olajumer, the distant and supreme one, Ama, who weaves the stars with threads of fire. They are the ones who guard time and observe destiny, but rarely touch the soil of men. Their domain is the invisible, the wind, the thunder, the flash that tears through the sky. Perhaps that is why, in religions of African origin, the drum is sacred. It echoes the heart of the Creator. When one lives only for material things, one dries up like clay without water, losing one's shine. The elders say that, in the beginning, heaven and earth were one body, embraced in silence, breathing together the same mystery. But when man was formed and the breath entered his chest, heaven withdrew, and earth remained, longing for the divine touch. Since then, the world has lived between two loves, that which is above and that which is below. And each beat reminds man that he was molded from clay, but animated by the eternal breath, the same breath that moves the wind, words, and stars. Firmament. Between these two realms, the ethereal and the earthly, man moves, trying to balance his celestial soul with his clay body. Sometimes he leans too much towards heaven and forgets the earth that nourishes him. At other times, he sinks so deep into the ground that he loses sight of the firmament. And it is in this ebb and flow that the spirit learns. The divine is neither above nor below, but in the in-between, where the wind kisses the ground. It's moving, the reunion of heaven and earth within us. Long ago, beyond the sands of the Nile, flourished an empire shrouded in mystery and power. It was called Meroe, the throne of the Black Queens, the beating heart of Nubia. Meroe was a city that spoke with fire. Its temples stood in honor of Ammonius, Isis, and Epidmac, the lion god of war and fertility. The queens, called there, the iron burned like divine blood, and the sound of hammers echoed like a prayer. Under the relentless sun, the people of Kush forged weapons, gods, and destinies. But the breath does not die. It merely withdraws, waiting to be revived by song, by drumming, by memory. For sound is the brother of breath, and together they keep the world pulsing. Of life. it supports. The ancients said that when thunder meets the river, a portal opens, and the gods converse again. Perhaps that is the sound the heart hears when the gods of the earth walk among roots and rivers. Oxum, with her liquid gold, Ogun, lord of iron and blood, Nana, the grandmother of sacred mud, Exango, king of stones and justice. They know the weight of life and the pain of seeds. They are close, passionate, molded from the same clay they helped to create. When the wind blew across the Atlantic waters, it wasn't just bodies that departed, it was gods, memories, and spirits. Bound in chains, the children of in every ancient village, there was always someone who didn't just sleep to dream. They were the griots, the guardians of time, weavers of memories. Their voices didn't belong to a body. They came from the very earth, from the wind and the fire. They didn't read from books, for knowledge lived within them, pulsating in the form of song, story, and memory. The pyramids of Meroe, smaller than those of Egypt, hold a silent beauty. They are tombs that speak, inscriptions that lament time and oblivion. Many archaeologists still wonder how such an advanced kingdom disappeared, leaving only sand and echoes. But the griots say, nothing disappears, it only hides from those who do not know how to listen. The Candaces ruled with wisdom and fury, defying empires and rewriting the destiny of the South. It is said that their eyes saw what kings feared, the secret of the balance between strength and spirit. The people of Meroe mastered metallurgy, trade, and the sacred desert routes. They were mediators between north and south, between the visible and the invisible. In their hands, iron was not merely a weapon, it was a symbol of the spirit that resists oblivion. Each blade forged there was a chant in honor of the ancestors. These wise men did not merely tell stories, they revived the past. Every word spoken was a return, every gesture an offering to eternity. It is said that when a griot spoke, even the stones listened. For in their narratives dwelt the spirit of those who came before, and the destiny of those yet to come. The griots understood the power of orality. They knew that sound is the thread that connects the invisible to the visible. Therefore, they treated each story as a ritual, and each myth as a flame that could not be extinguished. When the people gathered around the bonfire, time stood still. The night became a temple, and the griot, its priest. And when twilight fell upon the dunes, the drums of Meroe could still be heard by those who listened with their hearts as the wind carried an ancient melody, whispering, "What has been forgotten will one day be remembered." And even now, when the world is illuminated by screens and noise, the griots continue to speak. Their voices echo in the rhythms, the dances, the words that survive. Because as long as there are those who tell the stories, Africa will never be forgotten. There were secrets that only the initiated could hear. Codes hidden in metaphors, truths disguised as legend. Thus, ancestral knowledge traveled from mouth to mouth, escaping the clutches of oblivion. It was an ancient science, as precise as the movement of the stars, as alive as the pulse of the earth. Archaeologists are still divided between doubt and fascination. Some find traces of trade routes between the Nile and the Atlantic. Others see African symbols engraved on stones in the Americas. But the griots simply smile. For them, what science seeks to prove, the spirit has always known. The journey transformed the gods, but it also united them. What was once divided by tribes and nations became a single heart beating in exile. They mingled, learned new languages, and taught men that the spirit is like water. They refused to forget. Africa carried with it its orishas, its vodans, its nkesis. And even in the forced silence, the sacred did not remain silent. It crossed the sea hidden in songs, in clapping, and in tears. The deities changed their names, took on new faces, but never ceased to exist. In foreign lands, Oxum became Our Lady, Exango became Saint Jerome, and the Vodun Legba presented himself as the guardian of the crossroads. Thus, the divine found refuge in the songs, the drumming, and the dreams of those who, disguised, but alive, in the Americas, in the Caribbean, in Brazil. It changes form, but never loses its essence. The slave quarters became secret temples. At night, the drums spoke the language of the gods, and each beat was an affirmation of life. The spirits crossed time and the ocean, visiting their scattered children. This is how the African sacred was reborn. Forgotten ruins and faded legends speak of mysterious connections, Similar pyramids erected in places separated by seas, languages with alike sounds, gods with different faces but the same names. Perhaps the ancient world was smaller than we imagine, and Africa, its true beating heart. Some say that before maps existed, the peoples of Africa were already sailing the winds of the world. Ancient stories tell of kings who crossed the ocean long before the Europeans, guided by stars and spirits. Gold, salt, and symbols of power traveled with them, but what truly spread was knowledge. A knowledge that united distant lands through invisible bonds. It is said that the priests of Ifa and the navigators of Mali shared the same secret. The sea is merely a mirror of the sky. Thus, each crossing was also a rite, an offering to the deep waters that connect all that lives. The Atlantic, in this view, did not separate peoples, it united souls. And they say that, even today, when the drum beats with truth, the sea responds. For the gods who crossed the ocean still dance upon the waves, reminding the world that no power can imprison the sacred. And the griots say that when modern man understands the power of symbols again, the world will remember that the sacred was never forgotten, only forgotten. The Adrinkas of Ghana, for example, spoke of courage, destiny, and wisdom through simple yet soulful designs. Meanwhile, the hieroglyphs of Egypt revealed the very language of the gods, where each image breathed and possessed power. The symbol was alive, it carried energy, and only the initiated knew how to decipher it completely. And perhaps that's why, when we look at the horizon and feel the wind touch our face, something inside us awakens. As if the blood were remembering. As if lost connections were whispering, asking to be rediscovered. In every stroke engraved on the stone, in every mark made on the body, a secret was hidden. The ancient peoples of Africa did not write only with words, they wrote with symbols. Each spiral, each line, each dot represented an entire universe of meanings. For them, the symbol was not an ornament, it was a portal. A path between the visible and the invisible, between man and the divine. Translated into silence. But symbols also served as memory. Engraved on ceramics, fabrics, and walls, they told stories that even time dared not erase. Each one carried an ancestral code, a fragment of wisdom left for the future. Therefore, those who study them not only read the past, they converse with it. Priests and healers use these symbols in rituals and amulets to heal, protect, or invoke forces. The symbol was the bridge, a reminder that the material world is merely a shadow of the spiritual. When a warrior tattooed a symbol on his chest, it wasn't art, it was invisible armor. It was enchantment. Each stroke was a spell, each symbol an offering. Writing was participating in the divine act of creation. In Egypt, hieroglyphs danced on the walls like eternal prayers. They were words that breathed, capable of traversing millennia without losing their breath. Meanwhile, in the lands of Nubia and Meroe, the Meroitic script echoed the power of a forgotten people, whose language still challenges scholars. Each inscription is an echo of the invisible, a voice waiting to be translated. Further south, other systems flourished. The Nsibidi of Nigeria, the Tifanak of the Tuareg, the Vev of the Haitian Vodans, different traits, same essence. The symbol was the word in its purest form, the reflection of creative power. For the ancient Africans, drawing the world was the same as naming it. Before Latin letters touched African soil, writing already existed. Silent, sacred, engraved on stones, bones, and temples. The peoples of the Nile Valley and beyond the Sahara were already recording time long before books. Writing was not just communication, and they say that on quiet nights, when the heart is still, it's possible to hear an ancient whisper saying, "We never left, we're just waiting for it to end." In ancient villages, ancestral rituals were bridges between worlds. Offerings of food and fire were not mere gestures, they were conversations with the invisible. Spirits were invited to walk among the living, to teach, protect, and correct. For them, death was simply a return to the origin. The elders say that spirits never truly leave, they only change form. When the wind blows through the trees, when the drum vibrates on full moon nights, it is the call of the ancients. They are not dead, they are in everything that breathes. Africa has always known this. Time does not separate, it only transforms. The spirit of an ancestor can live on in a river, in a child, or in the silence before the storm. These writings carried spiritual secrets. Some were used only in initiations, others in healing or invocation rituals. Each line, each form, represented a living energy. The scribe was not just a writer, he was a magician, a priest of the word. And some say that, beneath the sand and ruins, alphabets still sleep that time has not dared to reveal. For ancient Africa has not forgotten its words, it has only hidden them from the eyes of those who have not yet learned to see. For the ancients, honoring ancestors was more than tradition. It was about maintaining the universe in balance. When the past is forgotten, the present sickens. And when an ancestor's name is pronounced with reverence, their strength awakens and spreads like wildfire. Light in the midst of darkness. The Babalorixas, Gangas, and priestesses knew how to listen to the signs. A fallen leaf, a recurring dream, a distant echo, everything could be a message. The ancestors spoke in symbols, in intuitions. They manifested themselves in dances, in bodies trembling to the sound of the drum, in the word that arose from nowhere and healed the soul. Remember. The creation rituals were moments of power and reverence. Fire represented spirit, water wisdom, and earth the body of the mother goddess. When the elders chanted and the young danced, they were not merely celebrating, they were reactivating the energy that keeps the world alive. The cosmos breathed through them. In many African traditions, the creation of the world was not a single act, it was a ritual that continues to this day. Each birth, each harvest, each dance around the fire is a repetition of the first divine gesture. Creating and transforming are faces of the same flame. Man, nature, and the gods participate together in this eternal ceremony that renews the fabric of time. Long before the universities and libraries of the West, Africa was already teaching the philosophy of life. Its schools were the rivers, the trees, the temples, and the voices of the elders. There, one learned that everything is connected. Man, the sky, the soil, the spirits, and the earth. He came. In the initiations, the chosen ones underwent symbolic trials. They were deconstructed to be reborn different, like the universe that needed to break itself to become plural. The body painting, the silence, the isolation, everything was part of the spiritual alchemy. It was the process of remembering who one is and where one comes from. The priest said that the power of transformation came from sacrifice, giving up what is small to achieve what is eternal. Therefore, each offering, each dance, and each prayer had a profound purpose, to sustain the cycle of life and creation. Destiny. That was the basis of African wisdom. Interconnectedness. Nothing existed in isolation. Ancient teachings spoke of Ubuntu, the idea that I am because we are. This philosophy guided kings and peasants, warriors and healers. It was more than a concept, it was a way of life. The good of one was the good of all. And so, with each generation, the ritual repeats itself. For creating the world was not the work of the gods alone, it is a task that still belongs to humankind. And perhaps, in every gesture of love, art, or faith, the universe continues to be created, once more. For immortality. African priests and thinkers also reflected on the balance between the visible and the invisible. For them, matter and spirit were not opposed, but danced together. The body was a temple, the world a mirror of the divine, and time a wheel that never stops turning. Knowledge came from listening, from silence, and from respecting the forces that cannot be seen. You. And perhaps that's why, when someone seeks meaning amidst the chaos, they end up returning to the origin, to that same ancient voice that whispers, everything that exists is within. Beneath the ashes of oblivion, ancient Africa still breathes. Its stories survive in the drumbeats, in the names that have withstood the test of time, in the gestures that repeat ancient rituals. There is a hidden, silent legacy that has traversed millennia and oceans. This spiritual heritage has inspired civilizations and religions across the globe. From the ideas of justice of Maat in Egypt to the notions of destiny and vital energy in the Bantu and Yoruba traditions, Africa was the cradle of thought that still pulsates in the human soul. It not only explained the world, it taught us how to live within it. Harmony with the community and with nature was seen as the true path. The African legacy is more than history. It is a mirror. It reflects humanity and its cycles of fall and rebirth. The wisdom that seemed lost resurfaces in everyday gestures, prayers, and arts, as if the continent were calling its children back. The gods who were once feared, the kings who ruled among the stars, and the sages who taught with symbols left marks that the modern world tries to decipher. Each archaeological rediscovery, each myth that resurfaces, is a glimpse of that ancient light, a reminder that the past never truly sleeps. To get to this point, it lives in the skin, in the speech, in the music, in the memories that the body keeps even when the mind forgets. Today, researchers, artists, and spiritual leaders are looking to Africa again and discovering what has been hidden for centuries. It is not just a search for knowledge, but for identity. Each fragment revealed is a seed that awakens, inviting the world to remember its own origins. And when the moon touches the waters and the drum awakens the silence, it is possible to feel the return. The return is not geographical, it is spiritual. It is the reunion with what has always been within us, the light that Africa ignited and the world, for a time, forgot.